All right, welcome back. In this section, we're going to talk about the turmoil that was happening in Britain that really led to the expansion of the English colonies. And that will lead us into the creation of those new colonies later on. So, there's some definite problems back home in England. You have religious conflicts that have really plagued England. While Spain really was plundering the New World and building an empire, the Catholic and Protestant English monarchs kind of vied for supremacy, and they attacked their opponents as heretics and all of this. Queen Elizabeth really cemented Protestantism as the official religion of the realm, but questions really endured as to what kind of Protestantism would really take hold. Now, you really need to remember and write this down, that there was a lot of, the radical Protestants, which kind of were known as Puritans, right? They looked at the New World as an opportunity to create Calvinist Christianity, okay, while others kind of continued to struggle in England. But they wanted to create Calvinist Christianity. And by the 1640s, the political and economic conflict between Parliament and the Crown kind of goes into these. It gets worse and worse and worse when you get a king who seems kind of sympathetic to Catholicism. And the result of that ends up being this really bloody civil war that becomes known as the English Civil War. Okay? And the colonists kind of react to this English Civil War in a lot of different ways, but all in all, it was very much affected by the turmoil. So looking at what really started this, you have to look at 1629 to about 1640. You have the absolute rule of Charles I, and this causes a lot of friction between the English Parliament and the king. And so this conflict really erupts in 1640 when the Parliament is called by Charles, and he wants them to give subsidies to him to support a rebellion in Scotland. But they're not going to give it to him. And so this really starts this civil war under Charles I. The Irish then go on and rebel the next year, and by 1642, you have these really strained relations between Charles and Parliament. And so in 1649, Parliament ends up winning this war that kind of takes place, and Charles I gets executed, and England becomes a republic and a protectorate under a guy named Oliver Cromwell. And these changes really kind of redefined England's relationship with the American colonies, because the new government under Cromwell attempts to basically consolidate all of its power that it held overseas. Now, in 1642, there was no permanent British North American colony, none of them that were older than 35 years old. And so the Crown and some other people, together, the other proprietors, they kind of control most of the colonies, but the settlers from Barbados all the way to Maine have a lot of independence. And that's especially true in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, where Puritans had kind of settled and governed themselves according to the colony's charter. They traded in tobacco, and the naval stores kind of tied the colonies to England economically, as did their religion and political culture. But in general, the English government had left these colonies to their own devices. And so the English Revolution of the 1640s really forced settlers in America to reconsider their place within the empire. Older colonies like Virginia and proprietary colonies like Maryland, they really sympathized with the Crown. But newer colonies like the Massachusetts Bay Colony, that had basically been populated by religious dissenters, that had taken part in the Great Migration of the 1630s, they tended to favor Parliament. So during the war, the colonies kind of remained neutral. They thought that if they supported one side or the other, it could really bring them into the war, and they didn't want that. But even the Massachusetts Bay Colony, which really nurtured ties to the Protestants in Parliament, remained neutral. But with Charles's execution in 1649, that really challenged the Americans' ability to stay neutral. You have 6 colonies, including Virginia and Barbados, that declare allegiance to the dead monarch's son, Charles II. But Parliament responds with an act in 1650 that says, hey, we're going to level an economic embargo on the rebellious colonies, and we're going to force them to accept that Parliament's in charge. And they argued that the colonies in America had been planted at the cost and settled by the English nation. And that's really kind of the embodiment that the Commonwealth, wanted to possess, the ultimate jurisdiction over the colonies, right? It followed up with the embargo. It followed it up with the Navigation Act of 1651, which basically said that, hey, merchants in every colony had to ship goods directly to England in English ships, and then Parliament would sell those from there. And they really wanted to, bind the colonies to England instead of, to the Dutch, who were also doing a lot of trading with them. And they didn't want them to interfere, the Dutch and the Spanish and stuff like that. The monarchy does end up getting restored with Charles II, but the suspicions of the crown's Catholic and French sympathies kind of hang on. Charles II's suppression of religious and press freedoms that had flourished during the Civil War years kind of demonstrated the crown's desire to impose royal order and rule. It was the openly Catholic and pro-French policies of his successor, James II, that ends up throwing the monarchy into question again in 1688. In that year, a group of bishops and parliamentarians end up offering the English throne to the Dutch Prince William of Holland and his English bride Mary, who was the daughter of James II. And they basically overthrow him and they offer the throne to them. They come in and take it from James II in something called the Glorious Revolution because, it was pretty much bloodless. In the decades that followed that, sorry, I kind of was going, I forgot to change the slides here. But, yeah. Here, it's past a William of Holland and Mary. Okay. So, in the decades before the Glorious Revolution, the English colonists had really had religious and political conflict. In the 1670s, early 80s, King Charles II had really, as we said, tightened English control over North America and the West Indies. He created new colonies, put the Navigation Acts. He established a new executive council called the Lords of Trade and Plantations. These imperial officials really attempted to curb the colonist autonomy. And then you have all the threats from the Native Americans and New France that leads a lot of colonists to believe that the natives and the Catholics are trying to destroy English America, right? In New England, you have an uprising in 1675 led by the Wampanoag leader Metacom, which we'll talk about, and he's known as King Philip, actually, is what the English call him, but his name is Metacom. And they kind of confirmed the fears that the native could kind of trigger a revolt against the royal authorities. And then Bacon's rebellion happens after that, and it really does confirm what the English are weary about, that they need to either really clamp down or they're going to lose it all. So, how does this happen? Well, James II had worked really hard to put the colonies on a firmer administrative and defensive footing. He created something called the Dominion of New England in 1686. The Dominion consolidated the New England colonies, New York, New Jersey, into one really administrative unit, and that was meant to counter French Canada. But the colonists really resented the loss of their individual provinces. The Dominion's governor, Sir Edmund Andros, he didn't really do anything to help solve those fears. He forced colonists into military service against the Maine Indians in 1687. And the English commoners really hated the idea that they were forced into service. And they didn't like that they did that in England, and now it's being transplanted to the colonies, and this is going to be a problem. Also, James II has a push for religious tolerance of Catholics, and dissenters kind of brought him into conflict with Parliament and Anglican establishment in England. And then you have the invasion by Protestant William of Orange, right? Where he said they basically said, hey, come just take the throne from this guy. We don't like him. So James II flees to France. Funny enough, the colonists don't really learn about this until later. The officials in Boston and New York really tried to keep the news of this glorious revolution secret, which really obviously made people mad and kind of simmered the hostilities between the leaders and the people. In Massachusetts, New York, Maryland, colonists ends up overthrowing the colonial government. And as basically these social antagonisms kind of fused with just popular animosity towards imperial rule, the colonists in America quickly declare allegiance to the new monarchs as they've been put in place, and they did so in order to keep their respective colonies, separate. If there's no king in England, there was no government in the colonies. So this process of the colonies kind of declaring allegiance to William of Orange and Mary really was a means to create stability. More importantly, though, colonists declare for the new king and queen because they believed that their ascension marked the rejection of absolutism, and it confirmed the centrality of Protestantism and liberty in English life. The settlers kind of join in the revolution by overthrowing the Dominion governments, as we said. They restore the provinces to the previous status. They force out the Catholic-dominated Maryland government. They launch several assaults against French Canada as part of King William's War, and they rejoice in Parliament's 1989 passage of the English Bill of Rights, which was really the first time a monarch willingly kind of gave up their own power to some extent too. I mean, in terms of civil rights, you had the Magna Carta, but this is a little bit different. For English colonists, it was a glorious revolution. It was a time for them to unite in a Protestant empire that stood counter to the Catholic tyranny and absolutism that the French kind of had going for them. So that kind of gives you some background into what was kind of going on politically during this time frame. I mean, it's kind of a back and forth, but just understand that that kind of gives you an overview, a backdrop of all the other things that we're talking about that are going on at this point in time. Okay? Thanks. See you next section.